Going to bring this meeting to order. I'm Ron Cooper, president of KWA here, and going to turn the meeting over to Les Best, and he's going to run the meeting from now on. Okay, Les.
Okay. Good to see everybody come. I'm going to have Barry Brando get up and say what we're trying to do, and he'll give us some information of who he's talked to and everything else. So I'll let him get up and say it.
Yeah, my name is Barry Brando. I've lived in the Boundary since 1978. We've been running a guide outfitting business in Grand Forks since 1980. I'm just the retired outfitter, angry as hell with what's happening to wildlife management. It's province-wide, and the deer herd in the Boundary is just, it has literally been destroyed. So I hope we're not here to talk about that question. We know the herd has been destroyed. You might have a pocket of a deer if you're a rancher, a honey hole if you're a hunter, but the herd is gone. One of the pieces of information I always talk about when we talk about history is this one. You can easily find it on the internet. It's the Boundary Deer Herd by biologist Dave Spalding, 1968. And Dave Spalding in 1968 in this report claims in 1966 over 6,000 hunters were hunting all of the Boundary, killing over 4,000 deer. Well, hell, how many deer do we have left today? I mean, we have been, if you put it on a graph, up at the top left-hand corner, we keep going down there to the bottom of the lower right. This is all politics today. If you read this report, Dave Spalding admits that the mule deer started to decline in the 40s and the 50s. Yet in this report, he's advocating a larger harvest. He also talks about a meeting that Alvin Hochsteiner was at, and a few others probably in this area. The hunters were there because they were concerned about the mule deer. So you can see the concern has been there a long time. And now the mule deer on the province is in serious trouble. In fact, one of the major grievances I have with Fish and Wildlife staff, and I have a newsletter and I've been very, very critical of it. One of the major grievances we've had is all these urban deer problems that we've seen on TV, we've read about it in the newspaper. With the exception of Grand Forks, which is white-tailed deer, and Vancouver Island, it's the black-tailed deer, it's the mule deer. And yet on this historic range, the outfitters are virtually not hunting them anymore, and very few people go for a mule deer hunt. You buy a tag, and if you run into a mule deer, you're harvesting. So that animal's in serious trouble, and now, out of nowhere, we got into the white-tailed doe season in 2010, and I hope all of us can agree that after the 96-97 winter, the whitetail never did come back. The number of doe permits they had, they kept increasing them, and of course, more and more roads, most of the age classes of the males today are non-existent. So you put it all together, and we got a strong argument for change. You know, a lot of you can be out there all day in many of your traditional hunting areas and not see a deer or a deer track. I know, like from our area, I can tell you there's damn little on Phoenix, certainly at Kerr Creek behind the dump at Greenwood, Boundary Creek, up the North Fork, the Gilpin, Christina Lake. You can go in our town, you can go in my yard, and people see the deer. And that is a major problem, because people now assume that if you go into a community and the deer are in the fields, and then there has to be a relationship to what's on their historic range. That's a major problem. But it really comes down to what are we trying to do here tonight? We're trying to get political, we're trying to get media attention so we can twig the politicians that we're angry. Because this is getting to be a ridiculous hard sell. This morning I was at the Grand Forks Deer Committee, and it's all about the cult. You know, when I first got involved, there was a lot of anger, so it's cooled down an awful lot. So I said to the mayor, I said to the assembly this morning, I will participate in the debate if you'll do your part and make a public announcement that the whitetail and the mule deer on their historic range are now becoming a rare sight. I said, and the caveat was, you don't know this, but I want you to spend some time with the hunters and listen to them. So the mayor, he's interested in doing that. Now, we tried to challenge this in 2010, the 3-week whitetail doe season. I phoned a number of people. I phoned Senator St. Germain, who I knew well, who knew the Premier Gordon Campbell, and he didn't go to Gordon Campbell. He went to the new senator from the East River, Neufeld. And Neufeld said to him, he said, well, I got lots of deer in my field, so there isn't a problem. So that didn't get me very far. Then he said to me, where's Bill Lockley? If you've been connected to the BC Wildlife Federation, you would know Bill. Bill was an executive director of the BC Wildlife Federation in the 70s. And the senator knew him because, you know, they both had run for the Conservative Party at the same time. I said, Jerry, this is his first name, I said, you know, Jerry, I'm going to phone Bill that way, but I'll guarantee you this isn't going to go well. I had twigged one of the outdoor writers for the Vancouver Sun in April of 2010 to do an article, which appeared not long after. And in that article, I challenged the numbers they were using to justify the 3-week white-tailed doe season. The same reporter went to the ministry, who said we had animals at record numbers, went to the president of the BC Wildlife Federation, he said the same thing. So I don't know, I mean, if you live the rural lifestyle, or you're a guy that hunts with his eye open, you see what I see. Most of these hunters are urbanized. They can hunt 2 or 3 weeks, this one area, one part of the season, or 1 year, then somewhere else the next year. We live around these animals. We know what the hell is going on. So I did phone Bill, and it didn't take too long. We were screaming at each other. He says we got 80,000 less hunters, so therefore we got to have twice the hunting opportunity. I said, you're crazy. You have any idea how many roads we got? And, you know, he was a great assistance to me in the early 70s with a group of hound hunters. We wanted to know why all these sudden changes to the hunting regulations to the cougar. We didn't know why. So we wanted the harvest numbers. We wanted mandatory reporting of the harvest, which is an interesting argument because it was statistics, and what Victoria was saying was dramatically different than what we were. They were saying we were killing 450. Actually, it come up to about 150 the first year. That's where I got to know Bill, and he was a great assistant. So we were screaming at each other there for a while. And I said, I'll tell you what, if we don't get an honest, intelligent wildlife management review in this province, we're not going to have a resource. And I can tell you today that listening to the voices I know, outfitters, ardent resident hunters, the caribou, the one outfitter up there that knows it more than anyone, who's a pilot, claims they're down 90%. We know in an article in the Vancouver Sun, one in the Globe and Mail, that the moose province wider in front. And they're saying all of these theories of what's wrong with the moose. You know what? We can still find moose tracks in the boundary because we're controlling the kills. Yet this article that appeared in the Globe and Mail just October 30th, a biologist says he knows that the hunting pressure hasn't changed in 30 years, and the caribou, so the hunting can't be part of the problem. You look at the roads, the quad bikes. If you live the rural lifestyle, you can see how we lose a few more deer every week, every day. Multiply it by 5 years, and yet all of these statisticians, this goes beyond them. So the problem is here, how do we get around? How do we challenge this? Well, I'm convinced that if we don't get media attention, we really are in serious trouble, because the mule deer province-wide, the whitetail, even the elk and the East Kootenai. And one of the outfitters I phoned recently, he's calls himself a systems ecologist today, I guess. He was telling me one of the watersheds that he just came back in a hunt, and this is important because it connects to some of the politicians that are involved in this, why we're in this mess. He told me that the outfitter that hunted in the watershed that he was hunting in, I guess it must be a hell of a big watershed, because he said Cody Taggart in the 80s in one season killed 23 bull elk, and yet he was hunting this year and he couldn't find a track. Now I talked to, and this is, I'm bouncing here, we got a major issue in the whitetail that connects to this issue. I phoned a fellow in Cranbrook, Weldon Atwood. I wanted to talk to him because he knew Carmen Purdy, who knows MLA Bill Bennett is the only active hunter in the legislature. And you know, there's so much bullshit going on. So I phoned Weldon and I said, tell me what's happened to the mule deer and the whitetail. We're talking Cranbrook. And he said, well, they're in trouble. But he said, you know what? I've seen more elk on the winter range this year than I've ever seen. He says it's got to be over 800. And I said, well, then, you know what? We see this in the main Kettle River. What we're seeing when we do a wildlife count today, more and more we're watching animals. We don't, you know, if you're out there, you can see it happening. They're coming from a larger and larger geographic area. So if you count the 800 he claims, and he said, we can't find a track. I said, well, that's it. They're coming from a larger area. So I had a long, long chat today with this hotshot guy that we got to convince to listen to us in Victoria. What the hell is his name now? Jerry Hudak. I was on there for over an hour. And he brings up Brian Harris's work. Brian Harris is the biologist who's gone up to the field in the main cattle, and he claims his field counts are the same. And I said, bullshit. I mean, I'm not going to argue the count because some of you are involved in that. So the count that. But what does the count tell us? Well, if you're out there, and as much as we are, you know that those are virtually all the deer we got. You can't extrapolate it and say, well, if there's a lot here, that means there's a fair number here or over there. And that's what they've always done. They've done that to us in Gilpin, and too, in one deer count, my son was with the biologist in the helicopter. So that deer count in the field is a major aggravation for us. But in my conversation today was with this Jerry Hudak, as he said, look, a lot of hunters like this 3-week white-tailed doe season. I said, you're crazy. What are you talking about, a lot of hunters? I said, well, they're beginning hunters. I mean, what about the people who know what's happening? He said, well, no, just hold it here. It's not the hunting that's the problem. I said, what the hell are you talking about? He said, well, I've got this theory. We know that we can have doe seasons in Alberta. We can have them in Kamloops, and they're not hurting the deer. Well, I said, they're gone. He said, well, what's happening? It's the predators. I said, it doesn't matter what the hell it is. They're gone. Why are you going to listen to us? I mean, the deer count in the field doesn't mean a damn thing. On Gilpin, where they had a big deer count on the helicopter, that's all we had. We see what's happening in Cranbrook. He said, are you going to change that 3-week white-tailed doe season? Well, he said, are you aware of our mule deer recovery plan? I said, no, not really. And he kept referring to it. And I said, you're telling me that this Valgeist theory is part of this? Valgeist is the hotshot biologist professor in Alberta. And he claims if you want to help the mule deer, you have to thin out the whitetail. Well, I said, well, just hold it here. You know, the only conflict you have with deer, if they're going to survive, is February, March. That's when crunch time comes. The feed's not there, they can die in a bad winter. I said, we got so much space in the winter ranges now, how in the hell can there be a conflict? So we go round and round, and now, okay, now we're back to hunting opportunity in the BC Wildlife Federation. I said, well, where are these hunters that, in the BC Wild? What are they going to hunt now? You can. I was up 28 Mile Bridge the long weekend, and met this young president of Trail Wildlife Association. He says, I'm writing a letter to Steve Thompson. I said, lots of luck, because suddenly the number of animals on the meat pool, as you know, has come to nothing. So we're right back. And this guy, this Jerry Hudak guy, we got a roadblock in front of him. It doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what I say, we got to convince him that this is madness. So we kept going around. It was friendly, and I told him a lot of my stories and how I've been involved in one thing and another. And he said, well, what would you want? What would you want? I said, well, I just went through the hunting regulations from the 80s. In the 80s, we had, as you know, if you've got good memories, we for a number of years, deer hunting closed October 31st. Whitetail had opened November 7th. November 7th, and closed November 21st. This is yesterday looking at the old regulations. Then it went November 7th to November 25th. And think of the roads we had then. There was no quad bikes. And of course, certainly that's why we've lost the animal. I said, look, in these 3 units, 12, 14, and 15 in Region 8, you got to get rid of the white-tailed doe season. Okay, he said, okay, what about the buck? I said, well, most of the age classes aren't there. I mean, all the little guys, they can't survive the long season, all the roads and the quad bikes. He said, well, what do you reckon? I said, well, whatever you do, just remember what we did in the 80s. Look at it. So he's kind of thinking he might listen. I'm thinking, well, he's probably just kind of politely flipping me off. So I said, I'll tell you what, we've had a pleasant conversation, and I got a temper, so I said, we did pretty good. And I did pretty good with Brian. I got on Brian Harris pretty good today. In fact, the government is taking some of my newsletters to the Attorney General's office to see they can take legal action because I called the biologist a liar. Well, he's the fall guy. I mean, it's well above him. They all know what the hell's going on. So, well, we know that they're excited because the deputy premier, Rich Coleman, who I don't particularly care for, is a good friend with the senator. And so the senator, he's talking to Coleman. He said, we got a problem with your friend in Grand Forks. And I said to the senator, well, what are they going to do? They have to prove that I'm the liar. And I'm not the liar. But it really comes down to what the hell do we have to do to get this changed? Well, first of all, we need to convince people that it's just not me or just a couple of you people. It is a wide section of the hunting community. And furthermore, I think we have to get into some of our Chamber of Commerce people, because eventually when this deer hunting comes to nothing, A lot of these people aren't going to come up here. Maybe they don't spend as much money as they used to, but you know, motels in Greenwood, Grand Forks, Christina Lake, they used to do a pretty good business in November, and that's disappearing. But I think really what we're going to have to do is we're going to have a meeting in March and try and have as many hunters as we can get out and get some of these MLAs in opposition. Now I have a pretty good rapport with a few of them, not like I used to. I guess some of them are annoyed at me, but I talked to Vicki Huntington. She's the MLA independent from Delta South. And I'm trying to get her involved in this whole wildlife management file. I've talked to Katrina Conway, they're a rural family. And their relatives hunt. You know, most of us who vote are fiscal conservative, social liberal. You know, we don't have a love affair with the ultra left, and we're not too happy with the uber right. We're the Senate. So you kind of talk to the politicians on both sides. Somehow that very quickly gets you into conflict. We've always known the MLAs in this riding, except this time we're so fed up we don't know Linda Larson, haven't spent any time with her. And I don't know if she would help us. I doubt that. But I think that we're on our own hook to change the government's mind. It's your voice. We want to hear, that's why I got Les Johnson here. We got a webpage, wildlifeheritage.org. And we're trying to get people to look at sound bites from hunters to say, okay, the problem is real. But we still have this issue with the BC Wildlife Federation. We still have people who want this 3-week whitetail doe season. Naturally, it's going to come to nothing in the boundary, so we don't stop it. So whether Jerry Hudak is going to listen to us or not, I said, well, here's the deal. You know, we had a good meeting, so I'll phone the senator, we're friends, we've hunted together. I'll phone him Saturday. And I'm going to say, Jerry, if you don't get, you know, we need to have a short meeting with the Premier. She can't micromanage, but if she doesn't challenge this hunting opportunity, if you want to make money, you're going to have the animals on the hill. You know that because you lived here long enough. You ain't going to make money when there's damn few animals on the hill. And what animals we haven't hurt, sure as hell, they're going to be on the line soon enough. So I guess I bounced around in a roundabout way saying this and that, but it's up to us. I'm impressed the number of people you've got here. Grand Forks, I shudder having a meeting with hunters anymore. We've done it enough. I don't think we've got 10 that really know or care. So we want to get sound bites from you. We're going to try and send this, contact this to other people who will try and help our cause. At the same time, I think we're going to have to try and get the provincial media. And we had the global guy, what the hell's his name? I forget his name. I don't know if you know anything about that mess we have in Grand Forks with Kevin LaFawn right across from Morrissey Creek Lumber, but you know, I don't care who you are, that's bad business. So Global came out and I got involved. So I've been corresponding with this guy trying to get him out here. But until we get MLAs involved in opposition and a larger group of hunters, it's hard to get to that next step because they still believe you go through Grand Forks, there's deer, so there's no problem. So I guess I bounced around, but that's what I'm trying to do, get your energy, get it on tape, and get it out there. Did I miss something?
Okay, has anybody got, if they got a comment or they got an idea of what we can do,
well, here, just
make it short and
just a quick comment here. I have got it. It's tangible and soaked in the paper. This is the rationale for your 3-week whitetail dosage. It is so damn insulting. I critiqued it. I don't know if any of you ever seen this?
Yeah.
Well, it ends. It's got a lot of bullshit in it, but it ends by saying this. Just a couple of comments just to show you what they think of this. The provincially coordinated whitetail deer season was implemented based on sound wildlife management principles and experiences throughout North America. As it is generally accepted in the scientific literature that hunting is not effective in controlling whitetail deer numbers, whitetail deer will not be closely monitored through population surveys. Some regions will also continue to assess population trends by ground-based surveys, blah, blah, blah. The regulations will continue until the end of 2011-12 hunting season and will be reviewed at that time. Well, they didn't review it. It's agriculture, it's ICBC, it's the city of Grand Forks, it's everything.
We've had the same discussion. My name is Don Johnston. I live here in Rock Creek. We've had the same discussion within our club, and we always get told the same piece of crap.
Yeah.
Pardon my language. that, well, we've got to call a whitetail because we have 3 ungulates we want to support. We want the moose, the elk, and we want the 2 deer populations. And if we get a cold winter, we don't have the feed for the winter if we get a cold one. It's always the same people, but it's the same people that are out there doing the counts that say, oh, I've got 45 resident deer on my property all year round. The deer become nocturnal. This is what they're telling you. Well, a few years ago, Fish and Wildlife put up a bunch of fences out in the bush. And if you go out there and have a look where the cattle can't get to, there's pristine wilderness. The only thing that can get in there is the deer. The cattle have eaten it all off. So where are animals going? There's nothing for them left to eat.
You're making a very significant point. We're on our own hook to move this further. You're not going to get any help from the bureaucracy. They might give you a slip service, that's it. Politicians, we have to twist their arms. I asked this Jerry Hudak, would you be prepared to come out and listen to some of these rural British Columbians? Well, I don't have a travel budget. I said, okay, then what I will do, I'm going to send you this video that we're going to take, and I'm holding your feet to the fire. But it really comes down to a couple of fundamental issues. Does the BC Wildlife Federation realize what's happening on our mountains? I mean, like I said, the caribou in the north, the elk in the East Kootenay, the moose province-wide, where there's an open general season, the mule deer, the whitetail. I'm sure that you're all aware of that. The next NDP government, the grizzly bear hunt will come to an end. If we don't show that we're stewards of the land, that we care, the question is what animal will be next. We got a lot of anti-hunters, and I think we've just been flat-ass betrayed. But you've made the point, we're on our hook to move this forward, but we're not going to get help from those buggers.
Anybody else? Any comments?
I can give you a count on the animals that I get through my shop. I own Kodiak Meat and Sausage in Rock Creek, and I process game. And I'll just give you some numbers here. 2010, I had 107 deer. I don't have the doe count for that year, but 2011, I had 89 deer, 28 were does. 2012, I had 103 deer, 31 were does. And 2013, I had 73 deer and 19 were does. So the numbers are dropping. I only had 73 deer this year compared to 100 over the last couple of years.
Well, in the east boundary, that's a lot of deer. You're not going to count squatch in the east boundary except in the city and immediately adjacent. I mean, that's done, I can tell you that. And with the wolf here, I said to these guys, why didn't you factor in the wolf when you liberalized all this damn hunting? I mean, you've got, how the hell are we ever going to get out of it? We got to get some sound bites up here, please.
Yeah, where we are on Sidley Mountain there, we had, or in our fields here, we used to have 40, 50 deer. Now there's, I don't know what's going to be left next spring, but there's normally, or I think there was about 20, 25 this spring, total everything. And every time there's a hunting season, they shoot the does, and the fawns, they have 1, 2 fawns with them, they're dead too. They all die. You see the coyotes pulling them down. They don't know how to look after themselves. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go.
And
so
they don't
you
survive the winter either.
Well, you lost that count plus the doe.
You made a good point on that. I'm just going to step in with you, Dennis, because we talked about this, few friends and everything, when they do shoot the does and they're leaving their twin fawns. We've seen those fawns, and in the wintertime they don't know to join up with the herd, right? So they just go walking around on the side of the road, and in January you end up hitting one on the highway because it's this poor little thing that it's totally lost. They don't seem to know how to hook up with the rest of the herd and know when to migrate and when to come back. So they're just either starve or get taken down by the predators or killed on the road.
The other deer drag them out of the yards.
So now you've killed this generation, and then the next generation's getting killed.
Has this got anything, pardon me, to do with the government paying the farmer X number of dollars for what the deer eat? and the alfalfa and grass and stuff. They just want to wipe out the deer so they don't have to pay monies to the farmers.
I don't think there's any depredation of money paid in our province. That's news to me.
Because I know we used to get a check there if they've eaten too much damage in the field, but like I told the agriculture chap, I said, it's not the deer that do the damage. I says, get rid of the voles. They're the ones that do all the damage.
There's two papers I've often talked about. This one here, which is interesting and frustrating in Spalding's history. This paper here, some of you might even been at a presentation. This paper was January 1988. What's interesting in this paper, you've got a good memory, Al Pete and Bob Lincoln were hired late 80, 81. They were the apologists. And in here they discussed the fact that the Okanagan Region BC Wildlife Federation was very angry with deer management in the 50s and 60s and demanded conservative wildlife management. They referred to that comment here. Twice in this paper, to paraphrase Al Pete's words, he said, this is 1988, we have so many roads in the Okanagan, we got limited staff and resources. Therefore, our hunting regulations have to be conservative. We don't have the resources to monitor the effects of more liberal hunting. Paraphrase right here. And that was a mandate driven by a different generation of hunters. And he talks about the way they managed it. The deer herd was growing 4% a year. Well, we're taking it down 4+% a year, haven't we? So, I mean, they do have a recipe if they listen to us.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to Uncle Ralph Riley. He can't be here tonight. He's in, and my father, Uncle's 87 years old. When he moved over, once upon a time on the Midway side hill there, that was their winter range for the mule deer. And they couldn't count how many was on that side hill. 20 years ago, they used to count 150 of them. They had nothing better to do but drink their coffee and glass those hillsides. Now they still sit there at 87 years old glassing that hillside and they count 20.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to make a point that I've taken the horseback trips into Faith to every part of your country, to Cochrane, to, and yes. Yeah, thanks for the cabin I slept in. And I'd just like to make a point. 20 years ago, I used to go in there and we had glassed 30 bucks, and nice bucks. And we were just trophy hunters, and we'd pass them up. Some years we'd come out of there 7 years and not shoot anything. I went in 2 years ago to take my nephew in there, and we shot one, and I wouldn't have kicked that thing over the hillside. It was just an average little buck. So that's what the sad part is when you go back into that high country, they're not there. Exactly what Brando was saying, that you can come around down the hill and you can count mule deer on every corner on the highway, and you watch these Vancouver hunters slamming on the brakes and jumping out with the binoculars thinking they're going to see some big buck. Those deer are there every day. So it is very sad.
It is sad. One of the deer counts that we have in the Freedom of Information letter, 1986 on Gilpin. Fish and Wildlife staffs counted 962 deer and said, using their citability index, in other words, for every one they counted, they missed one, they figured they had 1,100 whitetail and 900 mule deer. May 1986. So it wasn't that long ago, but we did it pretty quick and fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Diane Bernaski, and I have a farm up in the Sibley Mountain area. And I don't feel threatened, so I'm just going to say my 2 cents worth. Where I am, we've been there for about 9 years, and in that time, it is just we're in whitetail country, and it's just dropped dramatically. The last couple of years, it is unbelievable. I'm just going to hit a few points. I don't see any of you people out there hunting. All I see are the city guys. And whether or not I probably should say what I'm going to say next, I don't know, but there are ranches in the area that allow the hunters to come. And that's where the city guys come. And they come out of my woods, the deer, cross my field, jump into the next field, and they are obliterated. And this whitetail, this doe thing just has to stop. The babies, you just, you know, I'm not anti-hunting, please. I don't go out and hunt, but when I lived in Ontario, I did hunt. Okay, I'm from Ontario, and things to me always seemed a little bit different than, like, there's so much field hunting here. That's not hunting. It really isn't. But whatever. And like we've had cases this, you call the COs, right? Shots more than an hour after dark. They're so far away, they're spread so thin, they can't get there. We've caught people trespassing this year on our property, well posted, and the guy standing on the other side of the fence lying to us about where this third person is. Jennifer finally hauls his ass out of our woods. And, you know, like, it stresses you. I don't know how to explain this, but I'm not happy.
And we get a lot of road, and there's a lot of road hunting, so.
Every morning, every night, they're just and they are not local people.
They're not locals. They're always
They're there
people.
because there's no deer on our mountains.
Yeah, that's right.
They're protected by private property,
Yeah.
and we got a problem.
But even what I'm saying though, on these private fields, they are just gone. They're
The
just.
populations of the private fields are just
Yeah.
going down and down and
Could
down.
I just have one other thing, you haven't brought this up, but I would like somebody just to make a note of it, or you think. BC is only one of 3 provinces that has an hour after sunset for hunting. I'd like to see that changed to a half an hour.
I actually have 2 voicemails from, on talking to Mike Stern, the CO, who said, yes, an hour after dark after sunset is too late. And same with Bob Hamilton, the CO. Both saying that it's too late. And I think that just becomes a safety concern, and I guess where the problem is that when we get people, there's a lot of people from Sidley that are here tonight, because we have a problem in that area with most of the people that are out of, as you call them, urbanites. The guys that come out from, you know, you run into them, they're on the road, they're from Surrey, or they're East Indian from, you know, here. The Bob Hamilton they were looking for all these Chinese this year that were up in Regal Ridge hunting on the backside. So we're getting just inundated with people from the city that are just coming out. It's the weekend. Everybody's seen the Donald Duck no hunting from 1958, right? So again, we lose that generation, and then we're losing the generation before. And so I think that if those private areas are getting affected so much, then that's in turn happening because those guys, the deer, go to their historical grounds, and less is less is less, right? So.
Do we dare ask the question, is there anyone in this room supports the 3-week whitetail doe season? I mean, we're trying to set this message to other British Columbia via CD and the internet. If anyone, does everyone here agree that this has been highly, highly destructive to the whitetail area? We all agree? Yes.
I hear now with this new doe season, they've got very smart because they're getting shot at. Now they say they're hiding behind trees, that's why you don't see them.
No, there's no tracks. You can hide from swamp to swamp, there's no tracks.
One minute, okay? Here's a gentleman here from Oliver that hunts up in 57. Keith?
Yeah. Dave?
Okay, I'd like you were talking about, Silvio was down to see me and was talking about the migration. And do you have could you get up and talk about how the migration is depleted up there in Christian Valley? Would you do that?
I've been coming up here for approximately 40 years, and when we used to come up here hunting, first sign is as you drive up the Christian Valley Road is the amount of deer that the logging trucks and vehicles, the carnage that used to be on the side of the road. Now you go up there, it's rare you see even a deer hit on the side of the road, and it's nothing to be sitting hunting up there, and like we've been there a long time to only see a deer or no deer in a whole day's hunting. The migration, when we used to watch them in the spring coming up here, the fields, you literally could not count the amount of deer that were in the fields. Now you can sit back and count them quite easily that are the deer in the fields. The numbers are drastically dropped.
But you know, when we're talking about the doe season, when they do a moose hunt, they tell you to shoot the calf, don't shoot the cow. So, you know, if you have to do that with a moose, tell them to do that with a doe. I mean, the butcher will tell you himself he's getting does in there that are the size of jackrabbits.
They are shooting the fawns now because there's no does.
I said that just.
One of our major problems is, this is where the government's going to come repeatedly, the senior biologist in Victoria. What about the mule deer recovery program? I mean, they want to keep going back and going back and going back to it. And that program, in their view, means reducing the white-tailed deer herd. And so today we went through this 3 or 4 times. I said, Christ, if we quit mule deer hunting today and all over the boundary, in 10 years we might have virtually nothing. We got so many problems out there. So you're gambling that you're going to save the mule deer, and yet you're destroying the whitetail. Economically, it makes no sense. And the whole driver of this madness, on the top left-hand corner, second page of the hunting regulations, is hunting opportunity to maximize the revenue for the government. Well, we're at loggerheads on this point, so we're going to have to find a way to go over the top. We'll wind up with nothing if we don't. We've got to go find a way to go one step further to get that provincial media attention. That's where the whole thing lies. Talk to any politician, they don't like being criticized or embarrassed in the media. So whatever we do here, that's the next step, and it's the must step.
Did we not have this meeting 2 years ago up at in Midway?
The big issue was going to be, and I spent a lot of time in this in 2010, trying to get people to listen, and it became the average hunter was not going to listen until they were gone. That became the agony of it all. They weren't going to listen until they were gone.
Well, they pretty well did.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll wrap up here. I know we're talking about the white-tailed deer here, but it stems to all the problems. And like Barry, you've had a lot of good points. You bring up that mule deer thing. Well, a lot of that started because the Down Valley people are bitching because there's too many of them in their fields and stuff. So let's open a mule deer doe draw. Well, if you're concerned about the mule deer getting better, the first thing you got to do is get rid of that draw, because what has happened, and part of the problem, is nobody shoots these little inbred suckers in Grand Forks and Rock Creek because you can't hunt there anyway. So everybody that gets a doe draw goes up into the high country that Albin and Barry and them and used to guide in, and the odd guy's brave enough to go up and take the hike in to find a big mule deer buck. Those are the does that are getting popped off. So, the government just doesn't listen. And I mean, they're not going to listen to the biologists, and the biologists haven't got a voice, because if they talk to their superiors, their job's on the line. Like now, this year, an elk cow draw. Well, how goddamn stupid can we get? A moose cow draw. You historically don't see a lot of moose in the 12 and 14 and that. There are some. The regular season on the little ones, there's not that many of them shot. Now you've got a draw on the moose cows. You got more wolves than ever. Like, who comes up with this crap? It's got to be like somebody in the government that's inbred or something.
Phone call, talk to one of these biologists, you'll find out they got statistics up the yin yang to showcase that you and I don't know what we're talking about.
It all boils down to dollars. That's what it boils down.
Go ahead.
I just noticed that a few people wrote letters in here, and I think if you've got 40, 50 people here, I think if everybody took the time to write their own letter, send it in, I think that speaks volumes. It's good to do it as a group. I'm not saying it doesn't. But if they were starting to get letters from individuals all saying the same thing, I think that might make some difference.
My name's Joey Warren. I've already written a couple of letters, sent them to the government.
I didn't.
And I've been a range rider, hunter, and been training horses in these mountains for 43 years, and the deer are gone. I mean, virtually up high, there are hardly any left. I have ridden all summer, probably 4 days a week, miles every day on horseback, from lake to lake, swamp to swamp, all over burn areas where at dusk you can sit there and nothing comes out. And I can say that the deer are in the valleys, those resident farm deer that have been there forever and are basically there all the time. There's a limited amount of hunting allowed in those farm areas. Some farmers allow it and some don't. We ranched up on Rock Mountain for 30 years, and we had, you know, the usual hundreds of deer on the place. And I drove up at dawn and dusk several times in the last few weeks and counted an average of 5 deer between Jamie Haynes's down low, where there still are some on those irrigated fields of Harpers, and up to the top of Rock Mountain, 5 deer dusk, 5 deer at dawn. The biggest herd I saw was 6 with a buck with them on Klein's Field, way up top of Rock Mountain. And this is unheard of. You would normally see 70 deer in that drive. You'd be passing them in the bush. You'd be seeing them everywhere. And, you know, this is 43 years of being around here and seeing this kind of deer herd. So in my mind, there's no question whatsoever the deer are gone as far as the bush deer go. And this is why I wrote to the government and said, look, quit counting them on the farms. You know, they're counting them on Dag's place. They're counting them on Steffi Vosovich's place. They're counting them where the deer, assuming that they're all migrating down there for the winter. Well, it's not true. I mean, I found whitetail yards up at 4,300 feet up on Lee Creek last winter. I went looking for the wolves that I'd heard howling on horseback, and they were at my gate. And I had wolves, 4 wolves at the gate. One day there was a dead deer on the driveway that day. The wolves aren't helping, but the cattle are mostly gone from these hills too. The ranchers have been put out of business largely. And so there's more feed for deer than there's been forever, that I've ever seen. Since 1970, I haven't seen this much feed up in the hills. They could be supporting 5 billion more deer than are there on every kind of brush and anything they feel like eating. So when I wrote, I cited all this. I've talked to hunters in the bush, tried to appeal to them, the hunters from the coast and the island, to say, look, you know, like, are you seeing deer? And they're saying no. And you say, well, does it seem like a good idea to kill does? If you're not seeing deer, do you want to hunt next year and the year after? Do your kids want to hunt? You know, it's like, it's not good economics to go and kill the last of your sport. And they say, well, no, we're just looking for bucks. And then the next thing you see in their camp, there's 2 does hung up, and I would stop and say, how come you ended up killing the does? And they said, well, we drove all the way up here from Victoria, and, you know, it costs a fortune. I don't want to go home with nothing. So we kill the does. We don't like to kill the does, but there you have it. So the hunters that do come in and have traditionally come in from a long way away, because this has been a place where there were a lot of deer, are not getting them, and that's why they're taking the does. You know, it's a long trip, and there's nothing here, a few little bucks. But so between that and the wolves and the ATVs, which are a huge problem as I see it, because the ATVs by law are supposed to be used to transport hunters into where they hunt, not to transport them while they're hunting with loaded rifles. I've stopped several young guys up on the Baldy area when I was out camping for a while with the horses last fall, and I just asked them, you know, nice young guys, and say, how come you're hunting on the ATVs? It's kind of illegal. And they said, well, because if we turn the motor off, the whitetails run, so we just leave it running. Well, the deer are desensitized to vehicles all year round, and the ATVs are not helping any, because these guys, you almost never see a track in the bush anymore of a human footprint. They don't walk anymore, they ride these bikes. Well, this year, I think I've heard maybe 8 shots all season. And that's not down in the valleys. You know, if you want to go down in the valleys and watch them pit lamping at night when they're in there, you'll hear shots. But basically up in the hills, there's nothing left. And the guys aren't even there anymore. You know, I hardly see an ATV anymore. The people who are there are locals. And the ATV tracks aren't there in the snow. that have been there for years and years and years. There's no people tracks. Basically, it's just about over. The hunters aren't coming up high anymore. They're looking for them down in the valleys. They're up on Rock Mountain, they're up on Mancaster, they're going in behind those farms and getting those farm deer as they're trying to go to bed. And with those doe tags, it's pretty soon going to show drastically worse than it has been on the deer that are in the valleys where they're counting them every winter. So I think that it's a very serious situation too. And the response I got, I did get a response. I sent it to the Premier. I thought, why go small? And it got sent to Brian Harris. And his answer was, just to synthesize one line here, the hunter harvest of whitetails in Region 8 does not appear to have suffered from the introduction of the antlerless season. Well, he does say, white-tailed deer are generally secretive, and winter population surveys, as are done for mule deer, moose, and elk, are ineffective for monitoring white-tailed deer numbers, so we rely on hunter sample data and on counts of deer in hayfields and river flats. Hayfields and river flats, where deer aren't hunted and where resident families of deer live. And yes, some muleys migrate off the hills, and some whitetails, but nothing like the number of whitetails. I can find whitetails at all elevations in the winter. And elk with them. It's not like the elk are driving them out. Or the latest one I've heard is that the whitetails are driving all the mule deer out. You go. In 43 years of hunting, I've been watching them living together quite often. Two does, a mule deer and a whitetail doe, raising their babies together, and I have never seen any evidence that whitetails run mule deer off. It just seems absolutely preposterous. They don't even inhabit the same kind of terrain. But anyway, this is the latest I've heard. Some biologists have been saying that the reason that the mule deer populations are low and we have to hunt the whitetails heavily is because the whitetails are damaging the mule deer population somehow. Oh man, you go to school to learn that? Anyway, the other thing that I found intriguing, Brian Harris sent me graphs, which the standard ones, are they the same ones you have?
Well, he gave me some today. I said, Brian, you're going to retire very quickly. He says, January, I want you to give me a soundbite. You're the fall guy. But he said, I know you don't like this stuff. I keep describing, when they give me that stuff to me, I say, look, this reminds me of Samuel Clemenson's brilliant Mark Twain comment. There are only lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Right.
So carry on.
Statistics, right. So Brian Harris was very polite. And, but to say there's a catch line for disinformation. When someone says there is nothing, no evidence, you can always be suspicious of the information that you're getting. This is a catchword. This is a modern way of stopping any kind of reaction to something that you want to do politically. Is simply to put up an expert to say there is no evidence. Well, there's always some evidence, So when they say there's no evidence, you can be fairly certain that you're not getting, as you said, it's more of a political agenda I think Brian is trying to uphold. I don't know the man, but it seems to me he may disagree with what he's putting out here.
Off the record, he'd be very close to you and I.
Okay. I had a feeling.
Your comments are going to, this guy, this hotshot in Victoria, is going to hear your comments on the CD.
I shall be very careful. So anyway, as I say, I felt that there's something else going on that we simply don't know about this agenda to wipe out deer, because it's known. I think the COs know about it. They're talking to people like Ken Korf, who, obviously have had trouble keeping going because of the lack of butchering materials, and there's a number of different butcher shops that have been complaining about the shortage of game and one thing or another. But these graphs, if you look at them, the first one represents the deer harvest. Now, this has been the traditional harvest up to 2010, when they opened the antlerless harvest, and suddenly there were approximately a third more deer being killed. And blue represents bucks, red antlerless, which we'll call does because not too many people shoot buck fawns. So we'll just, they're looking for big animals. Most of them don't realize that if you kill a doe, the fawns are dead. These, you've got a significantly greater number of deer, whitetails being shot every year according to the hunter reports, all of which are antlerless. There's the bucks, the blue there. Same number of bucks, but that many more does. And we're seeing less and less deer every year. And my second question in my second letter was, if this is the sustained number of deer they've been counting every year since 1995, then how do you sustain, which you have been, if this really does represent a sustained population, then how do you sustain it? By raising the hunt by a third, all of which virtually are females. Well, okay. Now the third graph, which shows apparently no change, is this one here, which is the whitetail highest counts 2003 to 2012. Well, I kind of, in my second letter, went over these graphs. I didn't really want to use their statistics, but and that's all you get to deal with. You end up using them. Okay, so the red line here I sent back to them represents the normal hunt, that much more, all of which are females, are being shot every year. How long can this go on and still maintain any normal level of deer? Second of all, if this is the whitetail highest counts 2003 to 2012 and there's no evidence of a reduction, there's 2010 in which they counted 1,865 deer, in 2011 1,579, and in 2012 1,400. That's 1,865 to 1,400. I did the math, it's somewhere around 23% less. But there's no evidence that the deer are going to. Anyway, I think that the best approach at this point is, as the gentleman back here suggested, is more people need to actually say what they're seeing and send this information into the government. A petition is not normally the way to do it because they tend to find fault with the way petitions are put in unless they're perfect. They dismiss them. And the other thing is that I think that media is really a good idea, and I think it takes journalists to write even letters to the editor of newspapers, something that will get the general public interested in the shortage of deer, because the general public might have more effect in the long run than hunters who are traditionally, these days, villainized anyway for being against animals somehow, and you go, okay, there's just a lack of understanding, a lack of education among young people. They used to drive the deer out of towns with slingshots and rubber-tipped arrows, but now the kids are considered horrible if they do that, so the deer are living in Ma's garden. And people are going out and saying, oh, well, he's eating all the petunias, but we'll just put up with it, maybe we'll give him some food. And so we have those resident welfare deer in towns that have nothing to do with the populations in the hills. And the populations in the hills are literally devastated, but what people are seeing is the deer in Grand Forks, and the deer in Penticton, and the deer. So media is my idea.
I started a communication today with Jerry Hudak. He's the man, and Brian Harris, and we've known each other a long time. Like I said to you, I got a newsletter and I called him a liar. And that got everyone in the government excited. You're not supposed to use a name and call, you can say the biologist is a liar, but you don't use the name. I said, well, I'm not backing up. But Brian was pretty good to me today. And he said, I don't know if he was bullshitting me now. He said the biologists in the Kootenays literally want the whitetail gone. And you notice what they got in a bag limit of 2 or some damn thing in a whitetail there now? And Brian is making the argument. He said, I'm the one that's speaking for the wildlife. Well, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But this Jerry Hudak is the guy that we got. He knows. I told him, I'm coming to Rock Creek tonight. You're going to get the compact disc, and I'm going to be in touch with you. Now, I would, you people send some strong language to him. I'm not swearing, but saying these goddamn deer are gone. I'll get the email to Les. You just make a short note. I've been hunting for 20, 30 years. The mule deer are literally gone, the whitetail are gone. Where in the hell are we going in this? Something like that, so it's a little harder for him to get off the hook. Because he said to me, as I told you earlier, what would you recommend for the boundary? And I said, hey man, don't go, you've got to cover way back. You just reinforce it. It's only a small step. We got to find a way to get to that provincial media. I don't have the golden touch in that one. Maybe you women can do that.
Okay, Ronnie back there. Go ahead.
I disagree with there's lots of deer at the farm, because I live in 5 Christian Valley. And originally we moved there every 60, 70 years. Green up and even in September you see 20. Now there's none. There's 20 a year, I think, for spring. And green up there. So, and the second thing is this might, not everybody agrees with me, but I think we should look at more road closures, personally. Seemed to work in Kootenays where I hunted quite a bit. So, might offend a lot of people, but I think one option we might look at.
I didn't mean to suggest that their deer were still in the farm fields, by the way. I did say on our ranch, they're white. Bill Harper, before he died, told me a couple of years ago, I rode range with the man for many years. Maureen Haynes and I were driving cattle by there 10 years ago, and in broad daylight we counted 205 deer on their fields. The Harpers had counted over 400 in their headlights that year on the fields at night. And Bill told me 2 years ago that the biggest herd he'd seen that year was 18. So, you know, and yes, they're not growing as much alfalfa, but it's still irrigated, and those families would still be around there. Someone suggested they might have gone to the States. Wrong. Because Monty Alexander, who lives over the line, had already told us before he died, we live right on the border too, and he was our neighbor sort of, told us before he died that the deer were gone there too. So it's not like the herds have just crossed the border. That's not true.
Actually, I think they would have learned their lessons now, because in the 80s, when I was living in Kootenai, there was 500 cow elk draws there for a while, and decided they had too many elk. Well, they did that for about 5 years, and then they had the same problems we're getting now. So, but they haven't learned anything from it.
Well, the thing is, I think they know. You know,
Well,
this
they
is,
know.
I mean, like I say, there's an agenda we don't understand going on here, and I think that the biologists are stuck with it because that's where their money, their livelihood is coming from. And I don't know exactly. I have my own ideas that I'm not going to voice at this time.
Well, yeah.
I'm one of those people that lives on acreage in Christian Valley Road, right on the river, on the Kennel River. So I have those hay fields where we've, over the last number of years, had deer that come, that stay, that go up into the hill, whitetail that go up into the hills during the day and come down in the evenings. And the other springs that I've been here, I've seen 4 or 5 fawns, and when we go to cut hay in July, we're really careful. And we haven't hit any fawns, and we see them when we push them out of the field, and we might have 3 to 5 fawns. And we have deer beds in the fields. This spring, no fawns. I didn't see any fawns, and I looked, and there wasn't a single deer bed in my fields. This spring, I had maybe 3 to 5 deer. Right now, I have maybe 3 deer at night. And that's totally different than the other years that we've been here. So the deer, in my opinion, are just, they're not coming out of the hills. I ride into those hills and I ride out for an hour, ride out for 2 hours. I saw no deer through the spring, through the summer, or through this fall. I haven't seen any.
Neither have I.
I've never had a ride out where I haven't seen maybe half a dozen whitetails.
To ride all summer and not put up a deer is unbelievable, and that's what I've done.
Yeah.
All spring, summer, and fall, I've been on horseback half the week or more, and I haven't put up a deer all spring, summer, or fall.
I'm just going to quickly chime in with Joy here and back to Dennis again, because we touched on it really briefly, you and I, and then you said it again, and I think it might be the avenue to, you know, try to go at the government as well and say, yeah, it was, sorry, I'm just, my brain went in 2 directions, so I'm going to come back around to it, but it was on the news even, a native group, I think they were on the island or they were way up north, it just was within the last month, and they were getting upset because the people were coming in and hunting the female of whatever species it was that they were trying to protect, and I can't remember what it was. And they were saying the same thing, and it's a thing that we need to probably get across. When you kill a doe, you're not just killing a single animal. You're killing either the single fawn, you're killing the twins, and we've even seen in some of them where they have triplets if they have enough. So you're suddenly, so your ratio is drastically dropping.
That's in my letter.
Yeah, one doe, three
3
generations.
to 5 is for next year's fawns will be born, so call it 5.
So there you go. Yeah.
Every time you kill a
So
doe.
it's a huge. It might be the angle to make the politicians or the biologists say,
Well,
like, wake
I
up
think it
here.
would make the people listen, because that would appeal to the people better than some hunters writing to the government. Like I said, I believe the government knows. You know, like,
Well, I think it's a cash cow.
it's coming from.
Sorry, the more hunters you have, the more that you open it up, the more money they get. I mean,
Yeah, but they're
there's a
not gonna
revenue
get any money
stream.
next year. It doesn't make any sense. Like I said, I haven't heard any shots up in my country all.
But they still bet. They still buy like.
There are no hunters up there, so that's all revenue that they don't have anymore.
Yeah.
And who's going to buy tags to drive hundreds of miles?
If there are no. Well,
You know, like the ones they're getting are up on rock, you know, just around the backs of the hayfields now, so they'll be gone soon.
Well, and then that opens up. So when the deer and that becomes the problem that we're probably seeing more of in Sidley and everywhere else too. The deer up in those high countries are becoming more and more scarce. So the hunters can come down into the valley, and now we have safety concerns because we literally have 50 people on a 300-acre farm blasting anything that they happen to see, including somebody's horse or cow or lamb or whatever. So, because they're getting so anxious. So if the deer aren't here, everybody conglomerates down into the valley. So it's, it's compounding. Yeah. It's just flopping more and more, and we just keep wiping stuff out.
But what I don't understand is why there are not deer way back in the bush where I've been going, where very, very few hunters ever go. It's like, why are those populations disappearing? There used to be some around every swamp. Places where no one goes. There are no trails, no ATVs can
The ones that migrated down got shot.
Yeah.
And if they don't know how to migrate back, they're not ever going back.
Or the wolves.
So there's none left.
Yeah. And then when we start getting more roads and we get more fences that prohibit them from crossing back and forth, and then because we're seeing more and more fences. I love the part about the quads too. I'll agree, because I do rural real estate. I get out. Last year I had way more encounters with people. I was out in the bush. I was doing a lot of remote properties that I was out showing and selling. And countless times I came across guys on quads, and they stop to talk to you because you're blocking the way because you've got your vehicle there. And we go around, and they actually said, "Hey, don't walk on that side of the quad. My rifle's loaded." What part of that are you
And there are
missing?
no COs out there either. I haven't seen one for 2 years now.
And I mean, there's no plates, so you can't do any kind of reporting, and nobody's coming. So it's like, it's like, okay,
Well,
I'll walk on that side.
rat. You want to appeal to people to save their own sport. If they want to kill deer, then they have to.
But be safe, at the same time. It's like jeepers.
Okay, Calvin.
Hi, I'm Calvin Metcalf. I'm 17 years old, and I've been hunting since I've been about 10. And I've been going out with my grandpa and my uncle since as long as I can remember. And I can remember going out and seeing lots of whitetail, lots of muleys. But in the last few years, it's absolutely disgusting how much it's gone down. And, in the last 3 years, I've seen 2 whitetails. And that was 2 weeks ago. I saw 1 fawn and 1 tiny spider. And that's all I've seen in 3 years. And it's absolutely, like I said, disgusting to see this happening to.
And it's not hunter pressure. There was a lot of hunter pressure 10 and 15 years ago. On our ranches, it was bumper to bumper just about poachers, basically, because they had no right to be on private land. And now it's very much less than that. There was more hunting, I'm sure, that long time ago when they were deer.
One suggestion for getting out maybe guys to the media, because I know you've talked about it before, and you've asked people to step up, make a sound bite, write a letter. And I agree with Joey on a few times that petitions are hard because they get in there and nitpick. But you could take the website and create an online form which allows people to, so it's not really a petition, but it gives people that instead of sitting down, writing that letter that they say they're going to do and it never makes it to the mail, the intention is good, but the act doesn't happen. So inside the website, you build an online form that says name, whatever, and then you have a comment area. So you can write your comments, whether you want to write half a page or you want to write 50 pages, that you can write it, hit send, and then it goes to a central mailbox. So this way you can just keep collecting them and collecting them and collecting them, and once that website's out, then you can spawn that to other people and get a real wide berth of people if you have an online writing forum.
I understand that, but unfortunately the people who are mostly savvy about what's happening out there are people who, like me, live off the grid, don't even have internet service, and hunters and ranchers and farmers who aren't traditionally people who spend much time on a computer socializing on the internet. And or writing letters to the government, for that matter.
Right.
So these are the very people that are too doggone busy feeding cattle or breaking horses to want to do these things. This is why they live the life they do, because they don't want to be online.
Unfortunately, that is the way of the world now, is the computer.
Yeah.
So somehow we have got to get the younger generation to maybe talk, like for
Or
myself,
someone like
my
you,
father, my uncle, to make sure it gets on the internet.
And it isn't that hard. I mean, if I need to work to build a
People are going to go home and write that letter and send it in.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you got somebody, just like you said.
I waited
to help,
years,
right?
before I wrote this.
Okay. I got on CBC radio the one time, prior to the whitetail doe season. Log keeping was good enough. I give my very forceful message. He won't talk to me now because he drives through Grand Forks, he sees the deer.
Right.
But if you phone them, being a female and having your act together, there's a good chance you can get a clip on CBC radio.
Once. If it's a political agenda, it will only be once. I've done this before.
Yeah, I know, but
it would be good if we knew some hunting biologists. Are any of you professional people? Is there someone here with a degree? They like that, in something to do with
Well, the ones I see with a degree aren't getting anything done.
It's like...
Well, I recommend you personally try the CBC radio. Now, the other thing is, Kelly Hayes was the global guy that came to Grand Forks. This Kevin LaFawn mess. And he said to me, I'd like to live in the boundary. So I sent him an email and suggested he come here tonight. I didn't think he would. It was going to probably take a bigger form, maybe nicer weather, and an MLA or two coming. But others should try it, because I've been out there and I got a reputation. Not always good, if you don't like what the government's doing.
Well, you're a hunter. See, it's so easy to attack.
Now, we have Mark Hume of the Globe and Mail. Now, he did an article for me on Gilpin. Now, the print media is pretty sensitive because they're in economic dire straits. Fewer people are reading newspapers. So they're not apt to personally be the investigative journalism themselves. They like to quote from a report. But this, Mark Hume did a pretty good job on this moose disaster we have where everywhere in the province there's an open general season. So maybe others should talk to him. And what they will do is get your opinion or someone's opinion is pro-wildlife, maybe get someone who's on the other side of that question. So, and he has a brother who writes for the Vancouver Sun. He's a pretty nasty article on the grizzly hunt just a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
This is the Mark Hume you're talking about?
His brother is...
How do you spell his name? H-U-L-M-E?
H-U-M-E, and Stephen Hume. Stephen Hume is his brother who writes for the Vancouver Sun. And, those are people you got to try. I've been there, but it takes other voices. And Larry Pinn, the outdoor writer for the Vancouver Sun, I lent him one of my trucks once. He wanted to scope out the new Granby Wilderness Park. So others have got to try this, because as Vicki Huntington said, you're the nasty bugger that's been out there forever. They don't listen to you anymore.
That's right.
It's got to be other people. And I will send Les some of the information. So we got to get a hold of this guy in Victoria, Jerry Hudak. And we're going to do this. We're not going to get help.
G-E-R what?
Well, I'll get that stuff to Les. But there's no one going to help us. We're going to do this. You're going to have other meetings.
Does anyone write from action? I used to be a wildlife photographer. I have tons of photographs of the deer.
Here's the other thing. You're talking about biologists. I used to have a relationship with Steve Zender out of Colville, out of Shaweel. I asked one of the new biologists out of Colville to answer my questions, getting at what we did, a different perspective. I made a mistake because he's green. I thought, March I'll go down, we'll talk to a biologist. Remember, they hunt their whitetail with the rifle.
14 days. 3 wildlife units from the northeast corner of Idaho, right across the Okanagan. They got black powder, they got archery, and that's mighty conservative by our standards. So they got a whole different philosophy. So lower biologists we can connect with, but we have to do the work. That's the thing that's not going to change.
Okay, we got that lady back there. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Ron Rankin's daughter, and we moved up here about 9 years ago from Kelowna, and I never really seen deer before that. And when we moved up here, the amount of deer was just fantastic. Like, I was so amazed by the deer. Every day on the bus, I go, look, deer, deer, deer. The kids would be like, oh, go sit down, they're everywhere. And then when me and my brother go up to the bus stop, we'd always see little tracks of deer. We'd follow them. We were just so amazed. We see deer beds, everything. There was even a doe that would come into our field and have a fawn for 2 years. She would always come into our field, have her fawn, and rest there. She hasn't come back for the past 3 years. And now I don't see any tracks up to the bus stop. When I'm on the bus, I see no deer. And if I do, they're hit on the road. They're just gone. Like, it's sad. And then we get into the basic biology here. No deer, then the wolves are basically going to come in, take out our cattle, basically. Then we're going to have an even more big problem. It's just really sad. Yeah.
Okay, Guy?
Well, I'd just like to touch on what's going across the border here for comparison's sake there. Like Barry was saying, the whitetail deer season for high-powered rifles just across the line here, which is with all our 3 management units, is 14 days, no rut. And the mule deer is 10, 3-point or better, 10 days with guns across the border here. That's all I got. I took one of those Washington regs and bundled it up and sent it to the chief regulations officer in Victoria for him to read.
We do have 10 times our population in much more civilized land. Only 5% of BC is owned.
It's pretty rural down there.
But this problem with their hunt is not just local to here. I hunt quite a bit up north.
I've been in Merritt for a week.
I've hunted in areas in north of Prince George where we used to see 30, 40, 50 moose at any one time. The last time I was there was 2 years ago. We were there for 3 weeks. I saw 0 moose. I've seen more moose on Phoenix this year, 16, than I've ever seen.
As I said, I think there's some other reason, because why are the deer disappeared in traditionally unhunted areas? I mean, the deer don't seem to be there. And
well, I think we have
two of other animals.
We hunted the white-tailed buck, and we know he's a crafty animal. He knows how to live.
But he
These animals are all intelligent, and when they feel this hunting pressure, this number, the road traffic was, if you hunted in the 80s, we had that period of time with LP and buck, no doe permits. The doe was in the middle of the lawn. So they went to the LEH, so the doe's on the edge of the timber block and the buck's on the inside. They're all smart. They're reacting to this unbelievable pressure from quad bikes, long season, endless roads.
But they're not back beyond there either. They're not.
With cougar hunting, you go beyond 3K, baby, and after you go on 3K, the number of ungulate tracks you see is grim. Everything's down low where they got some protection from private property.
Yeah, I lived in Mackenzie for 20 years, and that's north of Prince George. And yeah, they have problems up there too. Lots of
As I told you, I've talked to enough outfitters and resident hunters, but here's how bad it is. This summer, during budget estimates for the Ministry of Lands, Forests, and Natural Resources, right up there in bold print, wildlife populations healthy, July 2013. On my newsletter, I said, this is nothing less than a bold-faced lie from Victoria. So you can see that our responses are not going to be generously received.
No.
We're at war with them.
Well, that won't work.
Well, by war, I mean a strong, aggressive argument. You're not going to sit down and work with them because, number one, no government is going to admit they've made a serious mistake. Politics in BC is played from Chilliwack to the Strait of Georgia. And this is a small issue. But nevertheless, it could get a lot of people angry. But, so they're not going to willingly say, you know what, we failed.
It needs the general public to get angry.
We'll do, but I mean, you're not going to work with them until we can finally force them to listen to us. And
Evidence, we've got photographs, we can write, you know, the general public, get them to understand that the deer aren't there anymore.
Well, we have a lot of concerned people here, and we all agree. We've all come out tonight. So where the hell do we start?
You've got a better quality of hunter in this part of the boundary than what we got. I doubt if I could get 10 to get interested in anything to do with the deer. And I'm being serious, and I've been there a long time. So you can do things that I can't do over there. So that is possible. But you know, we're going to have more meetings. I mean, maybe Linda Larson would take a tempered message to Steve Thompson, the minister, who lives in Kelowna. Maybe she might. I don't know. She lives in Ottawa.
Okay, I talked to Linda Larson,
What is he doing?
Secretary Colleen, and she said, when you have this meeting tonight, she said, get somebody to dictate it or get it on record and give it to us, and she will talk it over with Linda, and then she'll fire it right through to the ministry and get some action going. And that's what she said to me.
I talked to Linda Larson today. She was in our office.
Oh, she was?
Yes. Now, she let on she didn't know anything about this meeting.
Colleen didn't say anything?
Has Colleen got white hair? Do you know who she looked, what she looks like?
No, I just talked to her on the phone.
There was a lady with her. Now, this lady didn't say much. Linda Larson said she didn't know anything about this meeting. I said, you will next week, because I will fill you in on what went on. And just one other thing I wanted to say, there's a lot of hunters here, and that's got to count for something. It's got to count for something that the people that hunt are against this. You know what I mean? Against this doe season.
Ethical hunters.
Yeah, exactly.
And 100 was for it. They were all against it, even when they killed the does.
But anyways, I'm going to report back to her. I've got her card in my purse.
We'll send what we can to her, and because Colleen said that she would talk to her. Obviously, if she didn't know anything about the meeting, she didn't say anything, and I don't like that. That makes me mad, because
Well, she was coming around to invite everybody to a cocktail party or drinks, wines and stuff next week.
Yeah, that's probably what.
Yeah.
Diane, if everybody in this room took 30 minutes and called that office and left a message through the weekend or called on Monday during the day and left a message and said that they were here and that everyone in the room was in agreement that there is a challenge, she'd get the message. It's about numbers. And it's about actually picking the phone up or taking the time to write a letter, quick note to the editor of your local newspaper, getting some names out there of who it is that works for Global News that came about the issue in Grand Forks. Just enough people taking 3 to 5 minutes, and even sending the same letter to every politician they can think of and each news outlet they can think of. You don't have to be creative, just take the same thing, write it, copy, paste, email, pick the phone up and leave a message. Just saying, hey, I was at a meeting, I'm in agreement with everybody else in the room that something needs to be done. There is definitely a challenge, and maybe 1 or 2 little sentences that are your own story, like about how few deer you've seen and about what's going on in your own field, or that you're riding out for 2 hours and not seeing any deer where you go around every corner and see a deer. But it's going to take mass action, and getting the press on board does work.
I have another comment. Got time?
Yeah, go ahead.
The government knows statistics. That's all they know. And that's what they'll go by. Kettle Wildlife Association is involved, to my knowledge, in the springtime deer counts. Okay? Now, if they go by statistics, you've got a zillion deer here. Because...
No, they're going down. They were down 10%.
No. We've got guys that are doing a count whose numbers aren't going down. Okay. I know who it is, and I know where he counts. I control a piece of property which is home free. I allow nobody on it. The deer are there every spring, like February and that. I can sit there and enjoy my coffee and watch my little bunch of deer that survived last season. And the counter that has that area sits outside my fence and counts my deer, and they're the same amount almost every year.
That's right.
And there's your statistics. They look at his, oh, that's good everywhere.
I saw that. Yeah, that same deer is counted 15 times.
You're telling me your deer count isn't square? I mean.
Well, we had a meeting in March at our wildlife, and we had the biologist there, and he literally told me, I said to him, I said, there's not that many deer that you figure there is out there. And he literally told me, well, he says, you ain't much of a hunter. And you can ask the guys that was at the meeting. They said to me, well, you ain't much of a hunter because the deer are smarter than you are. And I said, well, that's nice. I said, and then all the rest of the guys started laughing at me because they know that I usually get my deer and that, and but that's what he said. And then I was talking to him on the phone, and I said to him, I said, I'd like to have you come to our meeting. And he said, well, this is exact words. He said, what, get hung by a lynch mob? So I said to him, I said, well, doesn't that tell you something? The people are mad. The hunters are mad because you will not listen to them. Why won't you listen to him? And he wouldn't give me an answer. So I was pretty upset about that, and I said to him, I said, yeah, that's the way it is, isn't it? So we got to get over their heads. We got to get by them.
Brian Harris today made the point that everything they recommend has to clear Jerry Hudick, and he's the great believer in the whitetail doses. And these guys are just rubber stamped.
You talked to this guy, Jerry, today?
Oh, round and round and round. I said this video is coming to him.
Yeah.
So he's going to hear some of your
Can you
comments.
spell his name?
I'll probably screw it up. I'll send everything to Les. I'll give Les the email, and I'll get his last name spelled right.
Okay, and I'll get it to you.
How do you pronounce it?
I don't know. So damn many names. See, one thing that happens, one of many things that happen
Sounds
when
like
you get older,
food.
names they don't work so well anymore. I'll have to get it to Les.
Were any of the conservations invited tonight? I was looking forward to one of them.
Yeah, Kenny was.
I talked to one, but he said it wasn't worth his effort if there was going to be no biologist here.
He what?
He didn't want to come because there was no biologist coming.
No, we got this roadblock with this philosophy from Jerry Hudick. Now, one question we haven't talked about is the mule deer. And that's relevant because the whitetail is being crushed because of this mule deer recovery program. In Greenwood, Grand Forks, Christina Lake, the mule deer is bloody well becoming extremely rare. I mean, I don't know how they could ever recover. I mean, the critical mass, we lost that fight. We took the government to task in the mid-90s, and by the late 90s, we lost the fight to save the critical mass of the mule deer, Greenwood, Grand Forks, Christina Lake. And we had the biologist there, the regional manager. I even had our senator friend talk to Steve Willett, who was the best manager we ever had, and he said, what can I do? We hire these people, they are our experts. So there's roadblocks everywhere. So the mule deer ain't going to make it in our part of the road. What's the damn? What about your part? I mean, are they down there too?
Way down, yeah.
They're way down. So, I mean, it reinforces my argument. If we let the government do what they're doing, we won't have the whitetail or the mule.
Well, whitetails are survived somewhere out in the wilderness.
Yeah, but for years, Barb Stewart and I don't get along, and I hear these deer count numbers. And I can't challenge them. And Glenn Miller's a straight shooter. I stay in touch with him.
Yes, he is.
And I don't know Kelly Harper, but he and I don't.
He's conservative, but he's.
Well, but anyway, I can't question your numbers because I don't live here.
He read this letter and said he agrees with it totally.
So I mean, so we're together on this. We're going to lose both the way we're going. That's good, because I wanted to know that you think the same way about the mule deer.
And
that means the
Kelly
mule-
told me the count where he counted last year was down 10% this spring.
So the mule deer recovery strategy's got the mother of all dark clouds up it, and it's taken 2 deer down with it. Whitetail with it.
Yeah, but if they're trying to bring the mule deer back, why do they want that whole month season on the little mule deer bucks and then have LEH for does?
Yeah.
Well, again, if you stick your neck out there, you'll get endlessly frustrated. So the argument, my first letter I got, because I write for even the letters, I'm saying, no. First letter came back, Mr. Brandon, you have to understand that bucks don't have fawns. Well, yeah, I do understand that. So that was the first blow off.
Oh my God.
Then the next question was, then they sophisticated the argument. They said, no, we got it figured out. If you got 20% of your deer count are males, bucks, then they can have long seasons on a population. So whether you got 60 animals left or 600. So it's sex ratio. I mean, that's the literature that I have from Victoria. So, it's this fanatical objective of mandating increased hunting opportunity. Top left-hand corners, hunting regulations.
I have a question for you. What do you think of the youth at 19 years old with an extra week before and an extra week later at 19 years old?
Yeah.
And you can go get shot.
Good enough if you got lots of animals. But when you got animals in trouble, and this is the other thing, we're not showing the wildlife resource any respect. We're trying to make money. And again, like I say, our neighbors hunting small population, we have a mule deer 9 days. No, I don't think that makes sense. Not at this point in the animal's cycle. But you see, there's the other argument. You got to figure that at a certain point when residence license sales decline, every employee in wildlife management is worrying about his job because he knows the politicians were broke. Where are we going to save money? Well, look, we're not making money in wildlife anymore. Let's get rid of a whole bunch of staff. So they have a bias of making sure license sales don't drop precipitously. Everyone's got an agenda. One loser is the wildlife. And you ought to also understand this. You could get a large group of hunters together. You're not going to get hunters that care. I mean, that's just, it's society. It's not hunters. It's our society's values. So you got an atypical group of people here today.
I'm not youth hunting. I'm dead against it. I look around this room, I see a lot of people, my age, younger, older, that took their children hunting through a normal season with them. Like myself, even now, during the regular season, I take my grandkids with me. I don't need a youth season. That doesn't teach them anything. All that is some swell pig takes some little kid along to run around in the goddamn bush, like drinks beer, and half the time they shoot the deer for him.
There you go,
On an ATV.
I've got a question. I'm an archer. We have an archery season, early season. And what do? They have the youth out there with rifles. We're all in camouflage trying to hide, and we've got a bunch of guys riding by, like 3 up on a quad. All of them are carrying guns, and you're trying to shoot a deer with a bow. Lots of fun.
Well, aren't those high-powered rifles too now?
Not really.
It's the same with the late season archery season, isn't it? Isn't that the
Oh, it's ugly in the late season. It's real ugly.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
We could argue that.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Ken Swart. I'm the BC Wildlife Federation Regional President of the Okanagan. Don't throw stuff at me.
Get it.
I asked the chair if it was okay if I could attend, and graciously said it was okay. So thank you for letting me be here. I took a lot of notes. I got your concerns. There's a couple things I would like to say though. One is the BC Wildlife Federation supports opportunity based on sound science. And if it's not sound science, we don't support it. So I do take a little bit of an exception with what Mr. Brando said, but that's for another day. So fair enough. The other thing is, if you write letters, that's all cool, and I support that. But somewhere in there, please put that you are a hunter, if you are, because a non-hunting entity will grab that and say, we've got all these people supporting our cause. And I don't care whether you think black is white and green is gray. As hunters, we need to stick together. And the BC Wildlife Federation has over 42,000 members in it. This Okanagan region is very active. We're from one end of the valley, from Grand Forks to Princeton to Lumbee. And we do have an open door policy with most of the biologists. We do talk to them. And I only wish that there was some of this input that was given to our provincial fishing, hunting, advisory committee meetings in the spring that we have every year. And maybe some of these things that have been implemented would have been either reduced or maybe not at all. But I came here to see the other side of the pancake because I haven't heard your concerns. I've heard them to some degree, but I wanted to hear it at this meeting. I found out about this meeting at 10 to 5 tonight. I'm from Karamias. I hustled my butt and got over here because I wanted to hear what you folks had to say. And I got 3 pages of notes, and we're having a regional meeting in about a week from now, 10 days, whatever. And I'll be reporting back to what you guys have spoken about. And I respect what you guys say. And my personal opinion here doesn't enter into it. It's what you folks are saying, okay? And I hear what you're saying loud and clear. And I appreciate it, and I thank you for letting me be in attendance tonight.
What's your name again?
It's Ken Sward.
Ken?
Sward, S-W-A-R-D.
And maybe while we're at it, we can reduce the hour after sunset.
I got it down.
Is anyone who wrote these letters have a response, or any of the people here who wrote these letters?
Say it again.
Are any of the people here who wrote the letters in this?
Just went out the door.
Yeah, two that just went out the door.
Do you know if any of them got any responses? Was I the only one?
No, they didn't get any response. That's why they give them to me to hand out.
They didn't. That's what I heard too.
Yeah. They were shut down like we were in our meeting.
But we've got a problem though, Les, even when you brought it up at the meeting on Tuesday night. The problem is that within our own club, we have people that maintain that we have a healthy deer population.
Yeah.
They absolutely maintain it. I'm in that bush. I'm retired. I'm in that bush almost every day. I see the difference. When you get off your quad and take a walk, go in the bush for 3 miles and have a look and don't see any tracks, that tells you something.
It tells you it's a political campaign because it always begins with there is no evidence.
Well, yeah, there is no evidence. There's no tracks. There's no sign at all.
Right. Well, but all they have to do is say there is no evidence that the deer population is going down, and they are the authorities that people listen to.
And then they say the statistics state.
And yet the statistics state the opposite.
Well, I mean, Les, we got that at our meeting on Tuesday night.
Go ahead, Ken.
Well, like I said, I have a meat shop in Rock Creek, and I have not had one hunter this year come to my shop and say, wow, you have a lot of deer here. Every single person that came into my shop said, there are no deer.
Very good.
Just one point I'll clarify. My position is that this government, if it wants to raise money, as they claim they do, in that top left-hand corner, second page of the hunting regulation, should absolutely quit listening to the hunters and put the animals on the mountain. I'm adamant about that, and I am probably going to have the ire and the anger of a lot of BC Wildlife Federation members. The hunters came to the east boundary, and probably your neighborhood, the same time they did in ours, when they found out the animals were on the mountain. So I do not believe in hunting opportunity. I've listened to enough stories from outfitters and resident hunters how that is working. It is a disaster. So that would be my argument to the government. Get rid of that, put the animals on, biology, you'll maximize your money. And you can't look at biology and disagree with it.
Yeah, go ahead. One thing you folks need to realize is that the monies that you spend on your tags and licenses do not go back into wildlife management. They go into general revenue.
Right. Yeah. And that's for a long time.
We are currently, we've been promised and we're working very hard to get that put back into the resource. And I think Mr. Brando would totally agree with that. That's what should happen. There is not enough money to support the resource right now because it's paying for health care and education. So we're trying to get the monies that we spend put back into our resource, very similar to what's happening with the Freshwater Fisheries Society.
But at the same time, surely to God, we can all agree, who've lived in this part of the world for 30, 40 years, that we've seen a tremendous increase in logging activity, all of it coming with roads.
Yeah.
How many, I mean, the quad bike is what, a 10-year phenomenon? 10-year phenomenon, big time in the last 5 years? So that has to be factored into hunting regulations. And you have to go and put the heat on the biologists. If you listen to the hunters and the politicians, I mean, anytime the politicians get involved in anything, we get screwed up. But the great boundary deer herd is gone as it is right now. Remember, this was the largest deer herd in our province for a long, long time because it was the perfect, if you read this damn thing, the whitetail first showed up in Beaverdale, evidently to the old Pioneer and Christina Lake, 1929. You weren't alive then, were you?
Pearl Haynes told me she saw her first white-tailed deer in 1945.
Well, I don't.
That down here, so.
When we were kids, we'd go hunting and hunting mule deer, and if we seen a whitetail, that was the talk of the fire at night. They, oh, we seen a whitetail.
Very rare.
So you can see how they move in.
Well, they're survivors.
I was out on, I remember this one time, probably 5 or 6 years ago up in Christian Valley on Rexon's properties up there. He's got these 3 lovely benches, and I was out with clients showing them property, and I had been on the property before, so I knew what was going to happen at that time of day, and I said, well, we'll just be quiet, we'll just sneak up across this bench, because as soon as we pop our head up, it's all going to be, woo! And we're going to see this huge white wave of all these whitetail tails going up in the big fan. And that was about 6 years ago that was on the market, I think. And it was great. There was like probably a good 50 or so, or 70, just this huge thing. I've been up on that property in the last year, and you see like 1, 2. So.
Anyone want to give us a soundbite on paper? We'll get that on the internet.
Thanks very much.
Not comfortable talking. We haven't heard a word from you, Lee.
How are you doing, Barry?
We haven't heard a damn word.
Well, everybody's doing well, so.
Yeah, but we wanted to hear from you too.
Actually, Elric said the best. Exactly. So he did well.
Thanks for coming.
He did it all for me. Where the hell is Zimmerman?
I think that
Barry?
wraps up.
Where's Zimmerman?
He's 3 weeks, 3 days a week on dialysis. He don't get around very well.
See ya. It was a good meeting.
Very good. Kelvin?
Well, you already said who I am. But this whitetail season is also, like, 3/4 of my friends are hunters, right? And I know a whole bunch of them who go out with their parents or guardians or their grandparents or whatever, and they've seen so many pickups, so many quads, that they've just gone home. I know 4 different people that have, like, they've come up to me and be like, hey, do you know anybody who's looking for a rifle? Because they're selling everything off, because they're done. Everything's gone. And they've come up to me and they're like, do you know anybody who wants my knives, my reloading set? Just because there's nothing out there for them to go out. And there's too many cars and so on and so forth. But, yeah,
Yeah, there is a few too many logging roads to the Alpine. It used to be fun riding through the timber, but when you got to ride up a logging road for 3 hours and then all of a sudden you're in the Alpine, it kind of takes the horseback trip away now.
More road closures.
And damn lucky we got the park we did. What little space we have.
And then the clear cuts. Oh, exciting.
Back in Dennis again, back on Wagon Road there, most of the deer that are shot where we are, and there's an awful lot of them, are all does or fawns. And they're all Fraser Valley hunters. You don't see locals that much. It's all, you might call them imports. And they don't, but they don't recognize no hunting or no shooting signs, you know, they just,
No courtesy.
I hope you people will come to another meeting. We're going to have a number more to get any critical mass and get enough attention, I'm
Where is
afraid.
this advertised? Because I wouldn't have known about it, except I ran into a hunter at the Rock Creek store and asked him if he'd seen any deer.
It's volunteer, it's, you know, it's,
But how did it get known? How did you people
I got
find
an
it?
email from Mr.
Yeah, I put out a notice on the boundary list.
What was it late?
Send Joe Falkowski.
It was kind of late getting
Yeah,
out for this
he would have
meeting.
been on the list.
But the next one, like we wanted to see
Been anyways.
what response we would get. So the next meeting we have, we'll get,
Bring your friends.
we'll let you know a lot sooner than.
And it
than
was
this
in the
one.
paper, but it was last minute, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Barry phoned me up and he says, could you get some people together
That's the horse.
and have a meeting, and then we'll have the media there, and we'll try and get it out to the government and tell them what we want. And I just said, okay, and it just exploded. And everybody I talked to, I said, let people know about the meeting and
So
that.
now that we're here, what can we do from now till the next meeting? Do you want letters? What would you like?
Yeah, you can get letters out.
I will give Les the address of Jerry Hudick, the email. He's, I think it's Hudick. I'll have to get that to Les. He, like I said, he doesn't think there's anything wrong with the 3-week whitetail doe season. And you can talk to him, he'll drive you, you just can't get your head around it. But he did ask me my opinion, because I said, you know, I'm not going to let this die. So you got to get some letters to him and just say, look, we had a large meeting and they're gone. And let them know about the mule deer recovery plan. He sent me more stuff than enough. But we're not into facts and all these figures. We're out there. We see they're gone. So you can send letters to him. I would like one of you to talk to the CBC radio, report what has happened here tonight. Bob Keeping, I can send that letter to you, the information. Like I say, Bob doesn't want to talk to me. We got Kelly Hayes in Penticton. He's global. We got to try and get him involved. We have a meeting, let's say in March, better weather. Maybe we can get Linda Larson. I mean, that would be a target.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing we got to aim at.
And the Wildlife Association could get on it.
Yeah,
You said that you had a website set up already for this?
My position is to be fully transparent with everybody. I got a lot of people angry, especially a lot of ranchers on my part. Fully transparent, everyone's there. And I told Jerry Hudick today, I said, this is what's wrong with what you're doing. All the stakeholders are not involved. It's just select groups of people. I don't buy that. You don't have to like my politics, but we all have a right to have a say. But yes, we put a web page together trying to challenge the 3-week whitetail season. It's Wildlife Heritage Forever. That's right.
wildlifeheritageforever.com, which is an awful long thing to type in. We probably will shorten that a bit.
But it was our attempt to morph it out, and then we hit the wall. Until they're gone, you're not going to get the hunters' attention.
Heritage River?
So it's a start.
Wildlife Heritage Forever.
Forever, okay.
So
Yeah,
we want to get Les to put this on. I'll pay him, you know.
Does anybody got any problem with me putting what you said here on the web, your face saying it, etc.?
I don't see any problem.
Okay, so
my
just,
cozy relationship with YouTube, I can put the whole thing on.
yeah.
I object to pictures on the web.
Oh, really?
I don't do Facebook, I don't do anything like that.
Do you
I don't
mind
use this.
having...
Could you have your
What I
face,
say is fine.
Yeah, okay.
so you could have your face blacked out and the words?
Yeah.
Okay, so the website again is wildlifeheritageforever.com.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's
Okay.
It's been a couple of years since
Not much there, but
Now-
it's our effort.
Yeah, okay, but that's good, because then at least it gives people a central, and maybe you could put Jerry's email on there, and then we could just email Jerry directly.
Maybe in the next meeting, what we
Send
could
your
do,
letter of concern, hit Jerry's email now.
what we could do maybe in the next meeting too, is get some CEOs
He
here.
would, yes, yeah.
And get some of these biologists here,
That's what you need. You need.
and maybe that might, you know, also help.
Does anyone want addresses for Minister of Environment, Christy Clark? I have a bunch of addresses here. Want to write a letter?
Online, text me.
They're all online.
Yeah, if you all go online, that's
Yeah.
fine. I have to go get them heard.
Yeah, I think putting Jerry's stuff onto, saying, you know, where, if you want to write a letter of concern, if your first step is to really change Jerry Hudak or get him on board, let's put his email and his snail mail on the website, and then people can write their letters in. And then you could just tap that into to CCing you as like CC here for you guys at the Heritage, so you get a copy of that letter as well.
Are you listening? I make a suggestion that if we have another meeting in March, that we invite Mr. Hudak to the meeting.
Oh, yeah,
Because
I said, well, would you come?
Because tonight we've got 50 people here, so if we've got 50 on a short motion, how about we get a lot more?
We have tons on, yeah.
Because if we gave 2 weeks or 2 months' notice, you'd probably get this auditorium
The whole
full.
community here.
I asked him if he would come.
You could, because everyone.
Now, he's got a travel budget problem, but it's not to say if we could get a politician leaning on the minister that he wouldn't send him.
Where's he coming from?
I think Glenda
Victoria.
Larson, I think, could.
Well, she would have to go to Steve Thompson, and Thompson would have to, okay, this was Tom Easter. You know, it goes bang, bang, bang. But yeah, try it.
Sure.
Try it.
I'm going to.
Steve Thompson, and then Steve Thompson will give it to Tom Easter, and God knows where it'll go from there.
Yeah.
But our problem is this so-called count. They fly over with their helicopter, and we've got people in our own company that are saying, oh, there's lots of deer out there.
Yeah.
My son was in the flights for about 4 or 5 years when the deer counts. Of course, when I started to criticize more, he's out of the loop. They aborted one of their wildlife counts. They got a grid. They do it on a grid. They aborted one of them only halfway through it because they couldn't count sweet bugger all in the way of deer. Once they got beyond the bighorns, you know, on the front along Gilpin, and after that, nothing.
Well, counting whitetails are pretty tough anyway.
What's that?
Counting whitetails in the winter is pretty tough anyway when they're wintering way up at 4,300 feet.
Well, they do it typically March, April. When they're down pretty low.
One of the guys that wrote in this pamphlet there suggested that there should be deer count in the wintertime. That's the ones that's in the field.
This was in January.
Just to see the difference between the two different, like one in the winter and then one in the spring, and just to see the difference of how many deer there is really there. I think that's a good idea. Because you're going to get the deer coming down, if the ones that's left up top are going to come down into the fields.
No, not whitetails.
On my email newsletter, I had John Holstock and Bill Otway for years on my newsletter. Unfortunately, they're both gone. So I have always tried to connect. Well, I've been a member of the BC Wildlife Federation for a long time, but I'm a great believer in transparency. We're going to fight like hell, but you know, so I could send, if you give me your email, I'll send you that. I mean, I just call it the way it is. And put wildlife first, we win. Put hunting first, we lose.
But you can get a lot of people in this province interested in wildlife, besides a few hunters. The very fact that hunters are protesting this should have even more clout with people.
You see, you made an excellent point, you know, because you chip this either way, and before you know it, the anti-hunters in this. But at the same time, if we don't fight, we're out of business. I mean, what kind of a soul do we have as a hunting movement if we stand silent? And if you have to get media attention, so I think the BC Wildlife Federation has to get involved in this and start listening to some of these complaints. Because it's a hardcore. Do you know Carmen Purdy? Okay, I've been to 3 of Bill Bennett's fundraisers because Bill's a fighter, and my wife ran campaigns for ages for the BC Liberals. And this is what caused us some grief with Linda Larson. She got mad my wife wouldn't help her, but that's another story connected to the Premier. But I know Carmen reasonably well. And I just phoned him recently and I said, Carmen, this is over. You know, he's a big time hunter. He got his elk. I said, Carmen, can the bullshit. I've talked to your neighbors. Well, he said, I'm going to go talk to Bill. I said, well, you better, because Bill Bennett, my son phoned him in March 2010, and Bill, he said to my son, he said, we got a good thing going for us. referring to all this liberalized doe, you know, the cow-calf seasons. Vicky Huntington, the MLA Delta South Independent, I said, you know, I resent that the BC Wildlife Federation is the only voice being heard. She says, you know, I was invited to a meeting by Bill Bennett. I agree, that's a relationship that's pretty tight. No one else is getting any inputs. So there is a lot of legitimate concern out there. I don't have all the sound bites either. Like I said, if we don't put the wildlife resource first and the head of hunting, we're hooped. And BC Wildlife went along with us.
And the big problem is that wildlife isn't just for hunters. I mean, we get just as much money with photographers coming to this province to take pictures. I mean, you look at, I used to run a charter boat business on the coast, and people came here to take pictures of grizzly bears. They paid thousands of dollars for me to take them sailing to take pictures of grizzly bears. And
careful how loud you say that.
But it's a fact. They come from Europe by the hordes. We've got nothing to take pictures of. They're not coming here.
You won't buy the calendar that's got my photos in it.
There's a guy from Vancouver Island comes all the way to the rock quarry to take pictures of the bighorns during the rut.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's going to take to destroy that herd, but right now, every outfitter in our province put in a draw for that sheep. So I can tell you something right there. It's the only herd that's got the old male representative.
Well, wasn't there one 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Oh yeah, there was a couple poached. I was on the hill that day, but there was.
Yeah, go ahead. I think it's important that people realize and what Barry's saying is true, but hunters put the vast majority of dollars out there. Right now it's not necessarily going directly to the resource. But, you know, if you want to stretch it a bit, you look to Africa, and where there's no hunting, there's no wildlife. Where there is hunting, they actually have a problem with wildlife. And I think if we put our dollars into the resource, we can get better habitat enhancement. I've been fighting for where I am in Caramias. I've been fighting for burns for 10 years. They do a 10 hectare burn and think they've done something. We can't get burns done. Habitat is a huge issue, and they don't improve it because there's no dollars. And people that come and, you know, I commend this fellow that comes and takes pictures of the sheep, but how much money does he actually put into it? You know, and Barry, you know, you're in the outfitting business. There's thousands of dollars spent in the guide outfitting business, without question. There's been studies done, and it's an astronomical amount of money that hunters put into this province, so that they can ply their pastime. And if we can get that formulated to go back into the resource, everybody will win. And I want to emphasize that we need to be on the same page, and that's absolutely critical. And like I said, I found out about this meeting at 5 o'clock tonight. I'm going to get communication links going with this club so that I can be in the loop on this, so that maybe I can coordinate with you guys. Maybe you guys might even come back as members of the Federation, because you're not right now, and we'd like to see you back. And in that way, you know, that information flow is directly there. Because I'll tell you right now, in 8 days or whatever, we're having a meeting with 3 biologists. They're coming to give a presentation at our regional meeting. I have a list of people waiting to come and give presentations at our regional meetings. So, politically speaking, everybody hates to talk politics, but folks, we have to be political. I mean, that's what Barry's saying is absolutely true. We have to be political. But we also have to show that it's the hunters that are sustaining and who care most about the resource. You see an elk fall through the ice in the lake, that ain't your guy taking a picture of it out there, grabbing hold of it. It's hunters. So it's we need to be as one.
I'm trying to get the trail Castlegar loop within this thing too, because a lot of the trail guys Castlegar hunt Grand Forks, and I guess we have more meetings. We've got to try and get some of those Oliver Suyas guys that probably hunt here anyway.
Yeah, you had 2 of them that went out the door.
Yeah,
Both them all.
people here are in the club.
Yeah.
what you got there is from the boys that hunt in
Yeah.
57.
Yeah.
Up
Yeah.
at 57 in Christian Valley.
Yeah, there's about 10 of them that got
Yeah.
this property up there.
And they've got some pretty good stuff in there too. That's the wildlife gentleman there should take one of those papers with him. Good. Good. Because they got some good stuff in there. I was really impressed with it. And they're really concerned about the migration. Really concerned. Because they said this year they didn't even bother. It was more of just a party than hunting because there's nothing out there.
Well, we went up October 7th. We went from Beaver Creek Road up over the top. I had to go over to Beaverdale. Counted 131 camps. Not how many units were in the camp, just individual camps. And how far is that? 30 kilometers. 30 kilometers. And don't ask me how many quads I passed, or horses. And I never saw one person on a foot. Not one.
No, not here. Not this year.
Anyway, we'll get a meeting going. Barry?
Yeah, I'll do whatever I can to stay in charge with Les in any way I can push it forward. I do have a reasonable rapport with a number of the MLAs in opposition. I might even I had an excellent rapport with the Premier, goes way back. But after I called Brian Harris a liar, that suddenly changed everything. You know, all these emails I ever wrote suddenly now are highlighted, and, you know, then the ministers read the highlight, they don't read anything else.
So I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and also I'd like to thank the Kettle Wildlife for letting us use the hall to get this going. So we'll be in touch.